where are we at in the process, what's the cost, and then what does the timeline look like. So we're asking for the council to contribute to, I've said 500,000, that might not be the right number, but significant amount of funds into the annual plan for the groundworks that are necessary to upgrade certain parts of the Elmwood Park as part of a wider redevelopment plan, and through the presentation I'll explain to you all the different elements. But the council is the owner of the land, and so needs to be the one contributing to the groundworks of the facilities. The cricket club is proposing to contribute around 850,000 towards the redevelopment of the buildings and the practice nets, as we'll explain to you, and we're asking the council to do its part, particularly because of the health and safety deficiencies that we'll get into in relation to the ground locations or the pitch locations where the wicket blocks are, and also as that affects the location of the nets. So we've been stuck in portacoms for a long time since the earthquakes, and so we now want to actually move ahead and get this redevelopment plan, integrated plan underway. So I'll hand over to Paul, and he'll tell you a bit more about who is OBC Cricket Club.
So who we are is the amalgamation of Old Collegians and Christchurch Old Boys. We moved from Hagley to Elmwood, and so that's why we're at Elmwood Park. We're the third biggest cricket club in New Zealand, biggest on the South Island. We've got 50 junior teams, which equates to 450 kids per week. 4 women's teams, and probably 5 or 6 men's teams at the moment. We won the Canterbury Sports Club of the Year last year, and our history is pretty proud. We've got the Hadleys, Paul McEwen. Currently, we've got Todd Astle. We have, as you'll see in the booklet, we've got Katie Martin, who plays for the White Ferns as well, and last year we had 5 of the girls from our club represent the Magicians, so that's half the side of Canterbury, so we're pretty proud of what we provide. So we're in the Stroh and Merivale area. It's a lovely park. We're so proud of Elmwood. It's just that we needed sort of a kick in the guts to help it. So for 60 years we've been there. The lease is up for renewal now, so we're under consultation with a few things which we'll touch on just next. So we're trying to get that improved. Changing rooms were demolished because they weren't up to standard, so now we're in the portacoms, and the practice nets, again, which we'll cover on, are no longer adequate, primarily when we've got so many park users just walking their dogs and stuff like that. Cricket balls just fly by now, so we'll show you what we're working on.
Okay, so that's the overall park context, and I'll hand over to David to talk about the reasoning behind the proposal.
Yeah, so obviously after the earthquakes we had to knock down our facilities. As Paul said, we had a club rooms on Hagley Park, but that was essentially donated to Canterbury Cricket in order for Hagley Oval to go through. So we built temporary portacoms, which we've been working out of since I've been playing for the club, which was 2012 I started, senior cricket anyway. And yeah, I guess there's multiple things that we're looking to do in terms of new net facilities, a pavilion, and relocation of the blocks. But I guess the main issues would be that the run-ups from the practice nets are inside the boundary of the #1 field, so they're unusable during the matches, and it keeps the kids away in the afternoon. The corner of the net, it's a cage, so there's a metal pole which is essentially encroaching on the boundary as well, which is quite dangerous. As Steve said before, it's open, unenclosed nets which face the path, and it's quite close to the fence line, so that results in danger both to passers-by and to neighbours. And then if you just... so these are our current facilities. The bottom right pictures those net facilities which face outwards, and you're heading towards the path, and it's very close to the fence line. And the top two are pictures of the old building, which is still standing but in a pretty sorry state. At the moment there's currently a gym operating out of it, but that is needs to move out, and the bottom left is the temporary portacoms. We funded that and the deck as well, just to kind of keep us above water. And if you just switch over one more, Dad. So this is a real issue, the overlapping of the boundaries between the number 1 field and the number 2. So the red lines kind of show just how exaggerated that is. Obviously there's going to be some overlap, that's just the reality of club cricket, but it's very exaggerated. It's an accident waiting to happen. Boundary riders are often left standing a metre or 2 away from batsmen in the other game, and they often have their backs to them as well. So, I mean, I'm very surprised that nothing's happened in the time I've been there, but it is an accident waiting to happen. In 2017-18, Elmwood hosted 3 simultaneous T20s for the Premier Men's competition, and after this season, this danger, or the danger of this situation, was acknowledged by the operation manager of Christchurch Metro Cricket Association and resolved not to host multiple Premier matches simultaneously at Elmwood again. So, yeah.
So what we're proposing here is to reconfigure the pitches to optimise the available land. So the number 3 pitch, which is the one at the bottom, it pretty much stays in that bottom corner. The number 2 pitch, which is in the right-hand corner, goes as far as possible into that right-hand corner, and then the number 1 pitch has got the bigger oval and more strips that would sit in the middle. So in effect, you're still going to have some overlaps, but you're effectively minimising those overlaps. That's important to get your agreement to that, because it impacts where we put the new pavilion building and the aspect of what angle it's facing towards where the centre of the number 1 pitch is going to go. So in the top of the building of the plan there, you can see the new relocated cricket pavilion. So effectively what we're planning to do there is invest in a brand new pavilion facility, but it's got to be in the right place, so it has to be part of an integrated plan. And where that is currently where the nets are that you just saw before, that are open at one end. So what we're suggesting is we demolish those nets and we put fully enclosed nets on that left-hand side there. And in fact, the angle of that has been slightly changed to get them further away from the trees. So that's not quite the most recent version of that plan. But we've taken input from the staff team and moved that so it's on an angle and further away from the drip line of the trees. And with that net facility, it'll be fully enclosed. So if somebody's smashing balls, out of the park, so to speak, then it's not going to hit somebody walking their dog down the path, because it's a fully enclosed net facility rather than being open at one end. You can also see here sort of an overview of the planned pavilion. And what we've tried to do here is use the same imagery as the Hagley Oval Pavilion, but this has one tent looking structure in the centre rather than the 5. So we've used the same architects, Wakefield, who are award-winning architects who designed the fantastic Hagley Oval facility, and we've sort of made this as an echo of that facility, although on a much more modest scale, obviously. And you can see the right-hand diagram there is basically showing it's a home changing room at one end, a visitor's changing room at the other, toilets and a social space in between, for lunches or whatever functions after the game. And at the moment, the team doesn't have a facility to have after-game functions, so it's totally inadequate what's there at the moment. But the club's been struggling to actually, figure out where to from here and how to solve it, and that's why I've. There's a couple of other images there that you can see, and the one I've passed around is the latest image. So we think this is a fantastic vision for the future, for the park. It's a 50-year investment. It's a big investment for the club, which is totally volunteers, but we'd like to get council behind us and assisting us in this. We've used professional expertise, as we said, from Wakefield, from Rough and Milne, from Elliott Sinclair. And we can't get started on the fundraising necessary until we get council buy-in and approval and get council's agreement that they'll put in their part of the deal, which is the pitch relocation part of it. In terms of benefits, we've probably covered most of this. Removing the temporary portacoms, reduction of the health and safety risk, which you're all well aware of. The laws changed since the facilities were originally put in place, so there's much more responsibility on you as the asset owner and on us as the club to make sure our facilities minimise the potential for accidents or injuries. We've coordinated with your sports people, with your parks and recreation people, with the leasing people, with Western Football Club, who's supportive and can use the facility in the winter season. And we think this is a project that the council should support because of your responsibilities to activate sports and recreation, health and wellbeing, and active use of facilities out in the community. We've gone through the consultation process, and we're currently in the consultation period around the new lease and the licence for the land areas required for the pavilion and the nets until the 13th of May. But the key next step really is to get the funding lined up, and in particular you can see there that the investment on the second line, relocate wicket blocks for safety, TBC, we've said council responsibility. So we can't progress with this unless you put the money in your annual plan to actually enable those groundworks to happen. We've gone ahead and raised 100,000 already, which is the top line in that second box, to pay for the nets. So we've got money waiting to get the nets built, and we could do that over the winter and before the upcoming summer season for those nets in that western corner that I mentioned, the fully enclosed nets, and then we can get cracking on demolishing the old nets and lining up the positioning for where the new pavilion would go. And you can see we're looking at raising all the funds necessary for the buildings. All we're asking for you is your support in the grounds. And we don't know exactly what it's going to cost to do those ground relocations. The complexity will be the irrigation system under the ground, and we need to make sure you've got the right people on your team to sort out what's it going to take to actually make that happen. And I'll put a bit of a timeline there, but probably we've done plenty of speaking. If you've got questions, then we'd be very keen to answer them.
Yeah, we've just come to the kind of like the end of the thing, and we've gone over. But Sarah had a question, so I'll just.
Thank you. And it's clear that you do a whole pile of really good stuff in the cricket and sports. Just wondering the shifting of things around on the park, and in your timeline that you've got in the different submissions, you've got the community board involvement. Are you aware that it's a community board decision to change a landscape plan for a park, and that to shift things around, a landscape plan would need to be consulted on and go through the community board for a decision? And have you started that process with staff?
Well, we've been talking to staff since last year and even before that. We don't necessarily claim to understand how all your processes work, but we've put our plan to them, the integrated plan, and they've said, here's the process you need to go through. There was a community board meeting in February that we wanted to go talk to and to outline the plan. We were told we couldn't because it was a closed meeting, closed seminar, and we weren't allowed to attend. But there was material presented to that community board. Some of those councillors who were there might be able to speak to that, but we've tried to work with your community board and your staff to actually progress this.
Yeah, I mean, a deputation or a public forum, because the community board need to be able to approve processes to go through, and they didn't sort of submit. I don't know if they've seen your submission yet, because that would be quite useful, but because they haven't referred to it in their submission. February
it went to the board.
Yeah, because they haven't referred to it in their submission, so it'd be quite good to see what. I guess we'll get some feedback on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but the landscape plan, to be able to shift the blocks and to shift where the building is and nets and those kind of things, would have to be a community board decision. So
yeah, I think we can work all of that out. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Look, thank you very much. Very detailed submission and covering all the bases. So thank you very much. We'll just record it as a pitch from your end of the table, and thank you very much for ending up the day with that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Leanne.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve.
I have to go.